You're live.
All right. Good evening, everyone. This is a regular meeting of the Zoning Board of Adjustment for Wednesday, October 16th, 2024. Notice has been given in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act by posting a copy of the notice on the first floor of the municipal building and sending a copy to the Montclair Times, Star Ledger, and Herald News. This is a public hearing in which any members of the public are welcome to attend. The meeting agenda is available on the Montclair website, as is a link to the Township's YouTube channel where the hearing can be viewed live or after the fact. The hearing is also being televised on Channel 34. We have some changes to the agenda to announce today. Application number 2889 for 204 Claremont Avenue is being carried till December 4th. And application 2886 for 61 Mission Street, which was continued from September 18th, is also being carried till December 4th, with no need for further notice for both of those. Thank you. And I will call the roll. Chair Harrison.
Here.
Vice Chair McCullough is not here yet. Mr. Caulfield.
Here.
Mr. Church.
Here.
Ms. Harris.
Here.
Mr. Moore is not here. Mr. Simon.
Here.
Mr. Vieira.
Here.
Ms. Grant. Here. Mr. Griffith.
Here.
Mr. Cruz.
Here.
And Mr. Sullivan.
Here.
We have the minutes of the September 18th meeting. I just have one question, maybe correction. On page 4, line 116, it says he testified that the windows measure 44 inches, which is the maximum required. I would thought for an escape window that would be the minimum. But he may have said the wrong thing because this was not the best testimony, would be my polite statement.
I do believe it. He said maximum, but I will double
Okay,
check.
if he said
and
maximum, then
make sure
leave
it's.
it, yeah.
Oh, leave it. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's what he said. Okay, we have a request for an extension for,
Are we going to adopt those minutes?
oh, you want to adopt them?
Well, it's up
Does
to
anyone
you.
else have any changes? No. Okay, someone want to move the minutes?
I'll move the minutes, Mr. Chairman.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Abstain.
If the abstains win. Okay, we have a request for an extension for the variance we granted for the property at 107 South Mountain Avenue. I guess since the resolution was adopted in October 2022, we're in effect granting 3 one-year extensions to bring them to October 2025, October 26, 2025. Does anyone have any questions, comments, statements, concerns?
So that would be 2 extensions, right? Because they have 1 year to do the construction, then 2 extensions to take them to 25. 2 one-year extensions.
I have a different view of that, but okay,
Yeah.
we can discuss that. We'll discuss that another time.
In any event, I guess the motion would be for an extension to October 26, 2025.
Yes. Someone want to move that?
I'll move that.
Second. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Next, we have the hearing of the application by David Gaynes and Jill Beckman for property at 50 Gordonhurst Avenue. This is an application for variances to add an addition at the rear of the house. They're constructing a dormer in the new roof area. The dwelling property is located in the R1 one-family zone and is designated on the township tax maps as Lot 6 and Block 4505. The easterly side yard setback of the dwelling is non-conforming, being less than 6 feet. And so the applicant requires a variance from Montclair Codes Section 347-45C for a side yard setback of less than 6 feet. The proposed dormer at the attic level requires a variance from Montclair Code Section 347-45A2, and it exceeds the maximum width allowed in order to maintain the 2.5-story designation, resulting in it being a 3-story building requiring the variance. Are taxes paid? Is the notice in order?
Yes.
Want to come up and...
All right, while the applicant's getting settled, I'm going to swear in the planning department witness. Ms. Casby, would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
I do.
State your name and position with the township.
Zainab Gazmi, Assistant Planner.
Thank you. And sir, would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
I do.
State your name and address.
David A. Gaynes, 50 Gordonhurst Avenue, Montclair, New Jersey, 07043.
Thank you.
Okay, proceed. Tell us what you're doing and why.
Yeah, we have a kind of what we think of as a fairly modest house, and it's 3 bedrooms on the second floor, unfinished attic, 2 bathrooms in the house, 1 on the second floor, and 1 in the basement, no powder room on the first floor. We'd like a little more living space than we currently have. And we'd like to renovate our attic so that it's like a usable living space with more headroom than we have. We sort of currently have the shallowest sloped roof on the block. Most of them have steeper rises than we do. Most houses are also larger than ours. Our second and third floor are about 2/3 the width of the footprint of the first floor. That's kind of uncommon on our block. We're looking to have a finished attic with a little more living space that maybe my wife and I might hope to have home offices in. We're both working artists. I have an office outside of the home. It might be nice for us to be able to use that space kind of for multi-purpose. Also our children and...
Just for the record,
Yeah.
Mr. McCullough just arrived and did not miss anything of consequence, so I'll be able to participate in the discussion and vote on the application.
Yeah, our house is kind of a gathering point for many neighborhood children, and as such, it's been overrun considerably. We'd like to maybe see if that multi-purpose space could be usable for a lot of kids maybe at some point, and having a bathroom up there might help that. Maybe we can take back the main level as adult space. We're looking to improve our home. We worked with an architect from early on. We're very, impressed by Karen Robinson's work, and we were sort of, forthright from early on that whatever we did was not to be ostentatious. It's like you see from our plans, pretty conservative addition. We're not looking to do something extraordinary or create a tremendous amount of extra square footage, and we wanted to keep it within the architectural, existing architectural, look and feel of the structure, which we're very proud of, trying to maintain and sort of like conservatively enhance a 100-year-old home, not make it look gaudy. So we think we have that design. We've worked extensively with Karen. She can take you through it. And, we would love to hear your questions, and thank you all for being a part of this process and giving all you do to the town, to what you do. Thank you.
Ms. Robinson, would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
Yes, I do.
State your name and business address.
I'm Karen Robinson. I'm a partner at Wright and Robinson Architects, 63 Adams Place in Glenridge.
You're a registered architect in the state of New Jersey?
Yes, I am.
Your license is in good standing?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. As David said, they're looking to get a little bit more usable space in this house. And the first thing that we noticed is that the ridge beam in the attic is quite low. At the highest point, it's 7'6", and it goes from there down to 0. So if 7 feet is a legal ceiling, they only have a little slot right down the middle that they can use as usable space. The rest would be storage. In looking at the other houses around the neighborhood, we decided to consider raising the ridge line of the house. For some reason, it's unusually low, and there's room, we think, to go up with it, and that would broaden the amount of usable space in the attic. If you look at the photos, the first one, you could see Gaynes' house, which is the light blue one on the left, and you could see how it's lower than both of the two to the right. The second photo is a close-up of the Gaynes' house and the house directly to the west. The next photo is showing the wall that is non-compliant. It's only 4.4 feet from the property line. It needs to be 6 feet to be compliant. And then the next picture shows the house directly to the east, which is also much, much higher. And then if you skip to the last one, it's an aerial view from Google Maps that you could see their house in comparison, just the volume of their house in comparison to other ones around it. So, if we start with the drawings with A1, you can see everything is in compliance except the setback. We'll get into the dormers later, but the setback on the east wall, because of the existing house, is 4.4 feet. If we raise the roof, raise the ridge, the space that we're raising will also be non-compliant. If you look at A6, you can see on the left is the existing condition of the house. And on the right, you could see what we are proposing. The maximum by code is 35 feet. I'm assuming a 45-degree angle, and that comes out at 34 feet. And then if you look at A7, on the right, the area in red is the portion that would be non-compliant. It would be new construction that's non-compliant. But we are hoping that because it's so low compared to the adjacent houses, that raising it that amount is not going to be a hardship for the neighbors, and it won't be imposing on their house. So that has to do with the raising the ridge. The other issue, the second sheet shows the survey, which shows it's 4'4" from the property line on the east. Once you get up to the attic, there's an existing dormer over the stairway to give you headroom to get up into the attic. We could, as of right, widen that dormer so that it's 50% of the width of the house. So assuming that the setback issue is approved, we would then put the dormer back to the 6-foot setback, so that would be as of right. And then the dormer being only 50% of the width of the house is as of right. What we're proposing is to have a shed dormer, if you look on A5, that's symmetrical on the back of the house, and it's set in 2 feet on each side in the back. So there's no change to the front of the house, and no dormers, no gables, anything. It's all on the back of the house. Let's see. So if you look at A8, and also the other photo that we skipped over, you could see the shed dormer that exists now as part of the headroom for the stair. If you look at A9, that's the dormer we can build as of right, which is 50% of the width of the second floor. Ideally, we would like to make it symmetrical across the back, which is shown on A10. where it's set in 2 feet from each side. If you go to A11, you'll see the floor plan. On the left, it's existing. The stair comes up, it's completely unfinished. It's got a ridged line and then it slopes down. To the right, it shows what will happen when we raise the ridge line. It will give you an area, wide area of flat ceiling in the center before it slopes down. The one on the right is the as-of-right version, which gives them space for a bathroom in the attic, but not much else. It's just the strip down the middle, which is somewhat usable as opposed to now, but that would take up the entire dormers, the stair and the bathroom. So we're proposing, if you look at A12, to widen that dormer so that it's symmetrical. And that way, to the left of the stairs, you go up to the attic, there'll be a space with a legally high ceiling that you could put an office or a play space. And it makes it considerably more usable. If you don't have that, really all you're adding is a stair up to a bathroom. It really doesn't solve their issues. That's it for the project. If you have any questions, let me know.
Just 2 points of clarification. So number one, in terms of the shed dormer, you said the work will be on the rear of the building. Is it your view that, is there a window on the back facing the yard?
At the moment, there's one window in the stairwell.
Okay.
And we would add other windows.
Okay, so is it your view that the windows would not in any way violate the privacy of your neighbor to the back?
No.
It's a really deep lot.
It's a very deep lot, and the lot behind them is very far away. And the houses on each side really pretty much line up across the back, so
Okay.
I
Okay.
don't think you could really see in.
Thank you. Also, just in terms of this, what you're proposing on the top floor then, thank you for the explanation in terms of adding the bathroom there, and then increasing the space to make it more user-friendly, so it wouldn't just be a bathroom, but also would provide for, as you said, office space or play space or whatever. So my understanding is that entire space would have a flat ceiling, is that correct?
If you look at A12, it will continue to slope down in the front, the way it does now, because we're not changing anything on the front. And then on the back, it would be flat out to the edge, out to the perimeter of the house. We're not changing the footprint of the building at all. It's all within the existing footprint.
So in the space from the ceiling where it begins to slope down, would there be anything in that space?
They might put toy boxes or chest of drawers or something that would fit under the slope.
Okay.
And then when it's really unusable at the last 3 feet or so, so that would just be blocked off.
And what would be the greatest height from the top of the ceiling, beginning the slope?
7 feet,
7 feet. So working 7 feet down to 3 feet approximately.
yes.
Okay.
There's a
And how
cross-
deep would that be?
There's a cross-section on A7 on the left. Actually, I'm mistaken. It's 9 feet at the highest point. At the moment, it's 7'6". It will be 9 feet at the highest point, and then it will at the center, and it will slope down along the side to a height of about 3 feet, and that from there on, it is not habitable, not usable space.
Right. And approximately how deep would it be?
Deep.
From the point at which it's 9 feet to where it's 3 feet?
um, 7 feet.
It'd be 7 feet. No other questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Church, do you have any questions?
Just before we do that, I think the record should reflect that Mr. Moore is present at the hearing.
Yeah, on A7, you have the drawing with the red lines.
Yes.
Your proposal is to raise it to the height of this, to raise it to 7 feet, 8 feet?
On the outside, I'm making it a 45-degree angle because it wouldn't make sense to make it any more than that. So the highest it could be would be 34 feet overall.
Okay.
Inside, the ceiling, if you look at on the
Yeah.
left of A7, you could see that we're raising it from, at the absolute peak at the moment, it's 7'6", and we're moving it up to 9 feet.
Okay, so if you're outside looking at the house, the highest point will be the drawing on the right.
Yes. It's also.
And that will match the houses around it.
I don't know if it matches exactly, but it's in the same spirit.
It gets closer.
Yes.
It doesn't block out any sunlight or,
No, I don't think so.
okay, to any other neighbors, because those houses are close together.
Yes. Yes. If you look at the photos, I don't see that
Right.
raising that a few
Okay.
feet would have an effect.
All right. Okay, that's the only questions I had.
Mr. Caulfield, do you have any questions?
So were these houses all built at the same time, do you think?
I believe so, yes.
What was the rationale of making this house shorter than the other ones? No?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
I mean, there's a slope there, right? But that would...
Yes, right.
What are your thoughts about this space later on? Could a bedroom be put up there, like a bed, in a sense?
Well, I am going to put a window that meets the egress requirements, should anybody in the future want to put a bed up there, just to be safe. But they have plenty of bedrooms as it is. It's the bathroom that's really the issue.
Gotcha. Are the steps going to be redone in this location, or are you going to use the
no.
existing? Okay.
We're going to keep the steps.
Keep the steps. And so there's a door on the bottom, and then the steps go up. Is that how that works? And there'll be a wall up there, and so
Yes, a
keep that
wall
on that side. Okay.
on the side of the bathroom.
Okay.
And then-
All right. Thank you.
Ms. Harris, do you have any questions?
Yes, and the section on A7, on the left, you show an area for duct space. Is there any room for mechanical equipment on this level, or where is it located today?
Yes, it would be up in that space. There's duct space up there. We can also use the area that's only 3 feet high to run duct space. So I would assume that the equipment would be over the ceiling, the air handler, and the ductwork would run along the edge.
Okay. And I understand there's no dormers, no new dormers on the front elevation.
Correct.
But that whole bridge is being
Yes.
heightened, so
Yes.
that whole roof line is going to change. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
I have a
Mr. Vieira?
question. Yes. Hi. So following up on that question, so the attic will be conditioned? The
Yes.
space, yeah. But different unit, it's a mechanical unit or?
It would be a ducted system that would serve the attic and the second floor
Okay.
together.
And the other question about the egress, emergency egress for the attic, it's not required to have a ladder and,
No.
No. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Cruz,
I have no questions.
Mr. Simon?
Hi, just curious, you said the primary goal is just more usable space. Was there any consideration of just expanding the first floor out into the backyard as an extension as opposed to going up?
I guess we thought that the attic space was already there. It's just is not being used, and rather than expanding the footprint into the backyard and occupying more volume at the ground level, we'd rather just raise the ridge a little bit to fit with the other houses and then make that a usable space in the attic.
Because I guess my question is more for the ordinance, which is more of a problem, going up to the extra third floor? Or would it be considered a third floor and an additional bedroom? I just don't know what the designation would become post-construction, and which would be more of a hassle, if that's the right word. I mean,
You'd have to build a new foundation, excavate, build out the back, more siding, more, I don't know.
Okay. How long you been in the house?
Yeah, we've lived there for 11 years now.
11 years, okay. Okay, that's it, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Grant?
As far as like feasibility, have you discussed or shown these to a contractor that you have in mind to see if there would be like any changes?
Not to a contractor. I'm working with a structural engineer who has worked on the size of the ridge beam that needs to go across and where it can be supported. But we haven't taken it to a contractor yet.
Okay, that's my question.
Mr. Griffith?
A7, you drew the line indicating the ceiling line in ACF 7 with a 6'8" ceiling to the side.
Yes.
You don't really want to push that up?
There's a
Does that have
building.
nothing to do with your approval?
There's a building code requirement that an attic cannot have more than 1/3 habitable space of the floor below. So if you have a ceiling 7 feet or higher for more than 1/3 of the top floor,
You comply with the attic requirement.
right,
for
you have
doing
to
that.
sprinkler that thing.
Thank
So
you, 'cause I did not.
it's a different code, but that's what I'm looking ahead to.
Right. It would have been another variance, no?
Yes, I guess so. I only think of it as it's either a third or it's sprinklered.
Okay. That's my only question.
Mr. Moore, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Okay. I have a couple. Just so I understand, the area where you would be encroaching on the 6-foot side yard requirement is looking at A7, is a very small triangular area before you get to the 6 feet. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then the dormer itself would be keeping both the 6-foot setback on the one side and the 10-foot setback on the other side. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions from members of the board?
I have one. The stairwell going to the attic now, is that pitch going to change? Is it steep or is it shallow?
It's going to stay exactly the way it is.
Is it a steep pitch?
I don't think it meets current code, but we're not obligated to change it to meet code as long
Okay.
as we leave it the way it is.
That happened in my house. We had to change the pitch because it was too steep. You could consider that. I think it's a good thing to
Yes.
do.
If you change so much as one tread, then the whole stair needs to be rebuilt much more shallow, and we run into
Right.
headroom issues.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from members of the board? Just for the sake of formality, are there any members of the audience who are hiding who have any comments, testimony, questions, anything you want to say about the application? Okay. Anything either of you wish to say before we discuss and vote on the application?
I don't think so.
And just, Mr. Moore, I think you got here too late. We'll
Sure.
let you comment, but not vote, is
Sure.
I think where we are. We'll start with Mr. McCullough.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I'm in support of this application. I think that what's being proposed is consistent with the neighborhood, and I think would enhance the neighborhood, and I would assume that because there are no neighbors here, that they basically would also be in agreement. So I'm in support of this application.
Mr. Church?
Yeah, I'm also in support of the application. I'm also in support of the application. It doesn't seem to do it's no detriment to the neighborhood. In fact, it comes into a little more compliance with the neighborhood. So I would vote in favor of this.
Mr. Caulfield?
I'm in favor.
Ms. Harris?
I'm in favor, especially since the dormer is only visible from the back of the house, not from the street. I think it is a little bit overwhelming to the building, but no one on the street is going to be able to see it. And so I'm in favor.
Mr. Vieira?
I'm also in favor of the application.
Mr. Cruz?
I, too, am in favor of the application.
Mr. Moore?
So just to comment, I'm generally in favor of the application. It doesn't seem to be a detriment within the community. It also seems in alignment with the planning considerations, and it'll be a nice modification to your home.
Mr. Griffith?
I'm in favor. I hope you get a good price on that.
Thank you.
Ms. Grant?
I'm in favor.
Mr. Simon?
I'm in favor.
I'm also in favor. I think this is consistent with others we've granted. This house is somewhat shorter than the rest on the block. We've granted other variances for the third story where the addition has been in the rear. The dormer itself is keeping the required side yard setbacks. The side yard setback is a small portion of the roof that's being raised is within the 6-foot setback, but I think that's a de minimis deviation, and I don't think it's resulting in a substantial impairment of the zone plan or a detriment to the neighborhood. Would someone like to make a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion to approve the application presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And there's the alternates who are abstaining. Okay, go
Okay, thank you very
proceed. Good luck.
Thank you.
We have the annual report. The troublemaking chair added a bunch of things from what you saw the last time, and I leave it to if you want me to explain any of them or if you want to just discuss.
What were the additions?
What changed?
Okay, so I'll go through. With number 3 as originally, number 1 was a blank as to what we wanted the zone change to. I looked back at what we had done, and R2 seemed to be what we were intending, the area on the west side of Grove between Glen Ridge and Claremont, north of the post office, to change. Then, as originally written, number 3 just dealt with New Mission, Washington. I added all the other blocks in that neighborhood, so it should be looked at comprehensively.
What exactly does that mean?
Okay, I don't know. I'm going to partially. I think. I didn't want to dictate what we thought should see. As we discussed and members of the public have commented on, the variances we have approved have resulted in a distinct change to the neighborhood, I guess is how I will put it, and is resulting in other changes that are taking what had been a very affordable neighborhood and becoming a not so affordable neighborhood. And I think rather than our changing the neighborhood variance by variance, or reaching the point where we start denying variances, I think the planning board and the governing body should take a look. I mean, the area, I don't know if it was just Wheeler Street or that immediate area was designated as an historic district. A lot of these streets are older than were developed prior to Wheeler Street, and that's one approach, designating the area as an area in need of redevelopment or an area in need of rehabilitation is another approach. My view is the neighborhood shouldn't change through variances. And I think there should be a looking at it, whether it's changing zoning requirements. I mean, I don't have any issue. I think in R2 that applies to most of the areas, the appropriate zoning in the area. You drive on the streets where we have granted variances today versus 10 years ago, it's a different world. And I think and sometimes transformations are very good, but I don't think it should happen through the variance process. And I don't, as I said, I'm not sure, and if the board disagrees and thinks we should advocate for a particular result, but well, I think, and it's a question of whether either through straight zoning changes or through a redevelopment designation and development of a redevelopment plan, they both can accomplish the same thing. I think, we're being confronted, and the house we dealt with today is, typical of what we've been doing townwide of, if the house is currently encroaching, we let them put additions on that don't encroach further. The houses in the neighborhood under discussion are very close together. We've had some discussion with some of them. Some of them we've modified what they're doing, so the addition didn't extend as far back, or we've had them pull it a little further away from the side yard. But I think that's how do I do? The standard setbacks in the R2 zone really just don't apply here. The lots are too narrow to meet the side yard. Virtually all the houses are close to the front property line, and certainly they're not meeting the 25-foot setback. And so whether that becomes simply a subpart of the R2 zone with different setback requirements, I think that could be a message to us of, okay, we'll have 3 feet and 5 feet, just to give an example, but then we really shouldn't deviate beyond that. I think, giving us some guidance as to what the planning board and the governing body envision happening here, we're confronted with, we get it, with corner lots is the most typical situation where almost none of the lots are conforming. And here we have a whole area where the zoning doesn't make sense in terms of how we traditionally look at it. We grant the variances, and it's, and I think someone other than us should be deciding, okay, given we're dealing with narrow lots with the houses close to the front property line, what should the zoning be, and then give us a context and a better position to say, no, you don't get to do whatever, to do that and help us. Unfortunately, don't see a way we can fully address the affordability issue.
Can we address the issue of the amount of people in the building? I mean, we've taken those buildings on Washington Street, they were two-family. They were single-family.
Well, no, most of them were two-family.
Yeah, all down that line.
Yeah, and it's zoned two-family, so it's hard to say the one or two. But by and large, they were existing two-family. They have changed the orientation to make it front to back versus top to bottom. And, I mean, that's another issue that could be looked at. I don't know if that makes a practical difference. One approach is to do, that there is an impervious cover limit, but the issue there in terms of a lot of these have paved backyards and they're frequently decreasing it. There could be a floor area ratio to keep the houses more modest is one approach that could do that.
Because that changes the
I think it's not only in this neighborhood where we're getting people who think that big units are a good thing, which, a few years ago everyone was advocating micro units, and now suddenly we're advocating big units. And I make fun of my planner friends upon occasion on their flexibility in what they think is desirable. But, and we could add as an example, establishing an appropriate floor area ratio, as being part of what's considered.
I think that, as we've discussed in a variety of these applications over time, and given approval, I mean, the question about, yes, the historical character, I think is important, and how do we make sure that we continue to maintain the historical nature of this neighborhood, it not be lost. And that clearly, in my view, seems to be at risk, because you just one by one, the houses are being transformed, and before you know it, the whole neighborhood has been changed. The second thing that has come up is when you do change the historical nature of this, there's the potential that you displaced buildings that have lasted for hundreds of years with new properties that may not last very long. And so what can be done, by the township to assure that these new developments are built in a way where these structures would in fact be durable and sustainable for the long term.
Doesn't that fall to the historical commission if it was?
That may be part of that discussion. I mean, it's not a discussion that falls to us necessarily, but I do think it's a discussion that we can flag, for the appropriate entities to take into consideration.
I mean, I think that's more of a code issue than a zoning or historical designation issue of how the buildings are constructed.
And the materials that are utilized.
Right, yeah.
But then can you specify that for particular set of blocks and not townwide?
I mean, we could, well.
Not necessarily, no.
I mean, I think that the only way to do that is to designate the area as a historic district. That's not going to dictate the quality of the materials.
Right,
it's going to dictate what it looks like.
Yeah.
Will some degree determine what material is used, but
It must be the height. These things, they don't have the width, they're going higher. There'd be an idea of what the heights of some of those buildings are and try to
I don't, I think they've always kept to the 35 feet, but,
I'm not sure
you
if
know,
everyone's 35 there, like the normal.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them are
But they're going deeper,
shorter,
too. They're
yeah.
going deeper. to the
They're
lot.
deeper lots, absolutely, yeah.
They're
Um,
long lots.
And do we limit
They did a
this
study on
discussion
that.
to this area that has been identified? Because there's James Street, kind of parallel to Chestnut Street, that kind of has the same issue, Sherman. I mean, we haven't seen many applications in those areas, but it's the same issue. They're much smaller lots than typical.
funny thing, coming here tonight, I was thinking that, that neighborhood, we have not, years ago, we got a couple of variances, nothing like what we've gotten
Right.
here, but, yes, it's the exact same issues there, and I if we want to do that, I think that should be a separate thing, just because I think I'm not sure the same and exact same answer applies to both. I think a lot of the issues are common. But I agree. As I said, I was thinking that, if we do something here, maybe that's the next place. They just haven't discovered it yet, and
Right.
Given that we have a good amount of applications that come before us, in terms of assessing like the New Street, Mission Street, Washington, I think that there should be some type of an avenue or a lane for us to advocate the neighborhood in terms of determining the vision of the future of it. I know that it's for the rezoning committee, but we're, as zoning board of adjustments, we're in front of it, and we know about the character of the neighborhood, as vice chair alluded to, and we have an opportunity to at least have some type of involvement, as opposed to leaving it up to, or not having any advocacy toward it. I think that it would be, it's important that we do uphold the character of the community, because yes, these are older buildings, and it's, they're historic and or will be historic, but also we're thinking about families too. So I think we had 2 applications that came in front of us some time ago on New Street, where where the architect, same architect, but they demolished the houses, and we weren't expecting that, and that jacked up the prices. And so the only reason why I say it's a good opportunity, or the lane that we should be able to take to address, even though we may leave it to a committee that deals with redevelopment. It's important that we say something so that this doesn't happen, because a lot of redevelopment is happening in town, and we're very diverse and inclusive.
I was going to say that, is there, it may exist already, but is there, like, when we're here, like a reference for typical height in the neighborhood, typical setback, like something where now, what exists now, there's a snapshot, even though things can change, but this is the character as it is now, and we would have a quick reference to say, we discuss it here, and usually, the architect will talk about the different homes, but then it's like they bring it to us saying, oh, this is the homes in the neighborhood. But if we had something like that for each neighborhood, then while we're looking at their projects, we would know right away, like, okay, this is really out of, I don't know if that exists or if that's even something we would be able to put together to have. The other thing I was gonna say is, I think that part of a comprehensive approach to a project is materials. I think that's just something that goes along with the design, almost like the design build model where everything's done together. So the contractor takes a look. We can't tell them what approach for the building to, like, you can't do design build, but I think materiality is very important for what we were just talking about as far as preserving. So I don't know, maybe materials, there could be, we do talk about materials, but maybe materials could be something that we make sure to just question about, so that when people come and they see other people come, they know that that's a question that is important. What are you using? Because many people now do build cheaply, and the homes that are being built now don't last as long and are not the same quality. And it doesn't make sense to replace something that has, old bones with something that is just not going to withstand, at least, I would say like 50 years. I mean, what's the point in building it? And then it takes away from the quality of the town, which, we're here to preserve. So while you're saying that it's the building department, part of that is their role, but then whatever we could do here, I think we should do it here as far as materiality and questioning.
Well, Mr. Sullivan or Mr. Harrison, is that something as a zoning board we could even put in a resolution, right? We can't really prescribe that or make that a condition of an approval as the zoning board, or can we?
He'll say definitely no, correct?
There is some discussion during the course of a hearing where an applicant may hear a suggestion from the board and incorporate a certain material, but the board really doesn't have the power to dictate, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Is that defined in building codes anywhere, certain materials?
Yeah, well, performance-wise, not necessarily it needs to look
As long
this
as it
way.
meets the
That's
strengths-
where
the
the
strength
historic,
conditions.
yeah, that's where the historic committee comes in, because
Yeah,
they
I-
can
discuss it.
But it's a question, I mean, the only way we can really dictate is if it's designated in a historic district and there are criteria established, and there, you can say, these are the acceptable materials.
And that's usually prescribed, though, by the historic
Right.
commission, not by
I mean,
us.
it's I don't think we can, I think there's a little bit of flexibility in the context of a variance that they're requiring. But, basically, I agree with Mr. Sullivan that we really don't get to dictate, we want you to use brick, we want you to use clapboard, whatever.
Well, I agree with you, but I can certainly recall on at least one occasion where I asked the question about materials that an applicant was using, and whether or not sort of their sense of the durability of those materials. And I distinctly remember one of them saying, well, it's made to last 30 years. I mean, I couldn't, at that point say, well, my vote is no, but.
Yeah, but I mean, that's where I think there needs to be ordinances that we can look at and say, and.
But why couldn't you say no? If you feel
I
like.
I probably actually did vote no.
Yeah, but I'm saying like if they're asking for a variance for some construction that's only gonna last 30 years, we could say that's a detriment to.
That's not your role.
See, that's
It's a township engineer.
That's your role.
The legal counsel comes in.
If you vote no for that reason, you can be reversed.
Yeah,
Okay.
because they can challenge it, yeah.
It's,
You can't even really.
Building code
What
and
designates
township
an
engineer.
area
It's
that
not
you need to
also
redevelop? How does that-
Okay, the criteria, this neighborhood would automatically qualify because of the age of the buildings. It's a no-brainer for designation. You know, it's,
And what does that ensue? And what happens then?
then, that does nothing. The town has to then adopt a redevelopment plan, just to give you a sense of, it's not a guarantee. The town adopted a redevelopment plan for both sides of Bloomfield Avenue where Valley and Bloom is located. They did a plan for the south side of Bloomfield Avenue, resulting in Valley and Bloom. They never did a plan for the side that includes the police station and those properties. And now they have a developer who wants to do something there. Little separate discussion I've had in the world, but as to they really need a plan. But, you know, the point is they need to do a redevelopment plan. You know, there are other things that come along with it, but,
Does
and,
it designate anything? If you're in an area in need of redevelopment, does it designate you have to do this, you have to do that?
no, it can be, it gives the town the ability to adopt a redevelopment plan, and the redevelopment plan can go more broadly than they can just by plain zoning as to dictating certain
So
things.
that's no guarantee that you could maintain a neighborhood by calling for.
No, I mean, the usual reason towns do redevelopment plans is so they can transform a neighborhood
Right.
into something different. And here we're doing want to do the opposite. You know, the parts of this which I think should occur, and hence I think we should put in here, I kind of watered down, is the two obvious things are designated as an historic district, because that gives us, you know, assuming the Historic Commission, you know, ends up in the same place and doesn't decide, oh, these buildings are all ugly and should be made into something different, which I don't think there's a risk of. And I think the floor area ratio is something that will keep the buildings in a scale that's consistent with what's there now. And, you know, most of the variances we've granted have involved significant additions to what's there, and even some where we cut back on what they were proposing were still significant additions. You know, I think I don't have strong views at the moment on should this be done just by zoning changes, should be done by a redevelopment area designation, but it's, for better or worse, not really the role of the planning board to do the planning. The Board of Adjustment to do the planning. The planning board is who's supposed to be doing that, and I'm going to say, you know, and partially my view is we're doing this months after we should have done it. We're going to have to do another one in 6 months. I kind of want to get this to the new council and see where they're heading. You know, for a while, we had been very successful getting the planning board and the council to adopt our recommendations, and then the prior council did not follow through. Several of these recommendations are carries over from past years, and I'm hoping that this council will be more responsive, and we will have an opportunity, because we have pending applications in the area, to get some further thoughts as to what we think should be done to protect the neighborhood and keep it in character.
I have just one concern with designating these areas as historic. I think current owners, not so much, new people who are buying into the neighborhood, but current owners might view that as a roadblock to improve their property. Having to make the application and go in front of a board and pay the fee and all of that, that's just
Well,
another
I mean,
reason not to invest.
I mean, that's the traditional reaction to historic designations, but they did do Wheeler Street, they did do Pine Street, where, similar issues, and the world survived. I think a little different in terms of some other neighborhoods in town where the designation has met with fierce resistance is virtually anything anyone wants to do to any of these properties requires a variance and going to the board. Anything involving an addition.
Right.
So it's not like, before we could put an addition on a house and we didn't have to go to a board, and now we do.
But how about cosmetic improvements in a historic district? Not adding bulk or changing use or anything?
And maybe we make that part of the recommendation, that the designation would only apply where people are proposing additions to the existing structures, as a way to, you're coming to a board anyway, and not have to deal with, I'm replacing the windows in my house and having to have the historic commission say, oh no, we want 6/1 or whatever.
Right.
And you want to get what is affordable, and I think that's an important way we can make a distinction, as to not have people come in and say, I'm replacing the siding and we don't like vinyl siding.
And there's precedent for that, to limit which applications have to be?
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason that it would be that the designation be limited to, demolitions, additions.
Okay.
So what I think so far, at least from what I've seen and how the town has been changing, is a couple of my neighbors, when they sold their houses, I've seen people come and flip them, keeping the bones. I believe I heard someone mention that a house was demolished. And I think when it comes to the two avenues, whether we try to see if we can get that area to be a historic district or an area in need of redevelopment, I feel that a lot of the redevelopment plans have been redefining the area instead of refining the area. And as I understand, in our capacity of the board, we're trying to maintain, as you said, the character of the neighborhood. And so I would think, even though there could be some hurdles with the historic avenue, that might be a better recommendation, since, again, it seems like many of the redevelopment plans have been completely transforming the areas that we knew.
I agree.
Let me propose something here, as we come a little bit somewhat returning to it. Okay, so it would read as it reads, those streets, and then say, in particular, a floor area ratio should be established in this portion of the R2 zone, and that consideration to designate the area as an historic district to apply only to expansions or demolitions of existing structures. And then add, the same consideration should apply to the area around Dye, Talbot, and Williams Streets.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that covers everything.
Okay, then my other changes,
Just one question. Number 4, look at the uses along Maple Street. Are you referring to like between Lexington and
there are
Elmwood?
2 pockets, one of which we've had at least 2 applications, and one application of 4 or 5 lots of non-residential use together that, and there are other areas in town where there are similar small pockets of commercial that are zoned to reflect that existing character, and it just doesn't make sense every time someone wants to do something with those properties. I mean, you know, whether they create a new zone category or fit it into one of the existing, it's just, they have been commercial forever.
Right.
And to pretend they're residential, it's, you know, this is not a one-off like we had the variance for Campy's on Harrison Avenue. These are a cluster of non-residential that should have commercial zoning.
Okay, thank you.
My other changes from we had discussion with the application the last time on the 24-foot limit, and I changed this, that doesn't meet up with, you can have 800 square feet, and so it would not apply to accessory dwelling units. There are other accessory dwelling unit issues which I'm not ready to get involved in. This is my way of putting it.
Which number is this? Are you-
15.
Okay.
Which one's the RO and R1, right? The 24-foot limit, I believe. See, this 24 by 24 on RO, you can't be greater than 24 feet in either direction in RO and R1. But I don't remember it exactly. I know the 24 foot apply to R1. I know that.
And it applied in R2 because that was the variance we had last time.
Okay. Why do they have the limits on length? Separate land.
Okay. I have no idea how little I want to be involved in this discussion tonight.
Take the short version.
The ordinance decided that accessory dwelling units should be accessory structures, not surprisingly. It did not think through that there were all kinds of requirements in the zoning ordinance that applied to accessory structures. And there's not a good mix and match between the two. So they went off and did things for accessory dwelling units, the 800 square feet, and didn't realize by calling them accessory structures that they were falling into other requirements that were there, one of which is the 24 by 24 limit.
Right.
The other
The height is an issue too.
and then the other change, which is the one that we added today, is the definition of accessory building or use says only carriage houses can be in accessory structures, which flies totally in the face of the accessory dwelling unit provision, and so we're recommending that be changed. So accessory dwelling units be also included in residential uses that can be in accessory structures. That was one I tripped upon while I was looking for something totally different related to accessory uses. I said, oh, that's wrong. But when that definition was adopted, only carriage houses could be in, it's the only residential use allowed in an accessory structure.
So applications now for additional dwelling units has to come before us.
Only if they don't meet the requirements in the ordinance. There have been, my understanding is a number have been approved, I don't know to what extent built, or people have come in for them that did not require a variance. But I don't know the universe of the world that doesn't deal with us.
I have two questions on in number 8. The final last line, this should apply to accessory structures adjacent to other accessory structures. And I was just trying to, what's an example of that?
Okay, and we had one example where this came in. Okay, the original, the first sentence deals with a prior recommendation we made. We had an application where someone was trying to get away with, I guess, the building width.
It was I think we talked about it. It was like just the expansion joint width, and they were calling it a different building.
And that worked to their advantage.
Yeah.
And even though in reality, they were effectively connected.
Oh, that 1 inch different, yeah, okay. I remember.
And so that led to the change on the 4 feet. Then, I don't know, I think there was a real-world example of this, or an example that was close enough that I said, oh, someone could cheat further by proposing a second structure that you not be able to have a small difference between, in the same way you can't have a small difference between structure 1 and structure 2, you can't have a small difference between structure 2 and structure 3 and still call it accessory when the reality is it's going to function,
As a primary building, yeah.
And because, but that's, we're trying to, if it's really part of the principal structure, should be treated as such and meet the setbacks rather than meeting the lesser such setbacks for accessory structures.
And the other one I had for 11, 12, and 14 related to the church and not-for-profit. I'm assuming this came from like that Tony's Kitchen, where they were saying they were using it for, it wasn't a church activity, the pantry, the food pantry, and there was some discussion about that. And I was just wondering, would it be easier just to say what can't be used for as opposed to trying to limit?
Well, no. Courts have been very generous in what additional uses can occur in houses of worship beyond the pure religious function. And Mr. Sullivan, Mike, correct me if I'm, and I don't think we should even try to enumerate what can and can't occur without running risk of people running in and screaming we're discriminating against some religion or another. The issue, and yes, this did come from the Tony's Kitchen situation, is the township should be informed we're doing, tutoring of students, whatever it is, no matter how innocuous, so we know what's happening, and if for some reason or other it is inconsistent with some township ordinance, we can tell them at the time. Otherwise, we just know what's going on there.
That's all I have.
Just to explain 16 and 17, which really go together. For reasons I don't understand, we don't require, we, not us, LLCs to put their principals on the application. When I represent LLCs, I always put my principals on. My view of the statute, even though it doesn't mention LLCs, the clear intention was, tell us who your people are. And, so I think, one, we should require that. If nothing else, one of the reasons for that is so there's a conflict. To do mine with Mr. Plofker, he has 100 different entity names, and I don't know them all because I only represent him on one little thing in Verona. But if it just says the XYZ LLC, his I can tell because they all have the same address. But others, and I'm not the only person to have conflicts and discover, oh, that's my next door neighbor who's the principal of this. And that doesn't inherently mean a conflict, but you ought to know and consider, do you want to step on your next door neighbor's foot? And but the bigger reason for it is we have this same people going back to Mission New, et cetera, submitting the applications. And I think, and one of the ways of having some control over what's happening in the neighborhood, if they change the affordable housing requirement, so if the same person is doing 5 or more units, the requirement kicks in and...
Anywhere.
Yeah,
The sum total
anywhere in
of
the town,
township.
and say, okay, you don't get to keep doing two-family, two-family, two-family and have no affordable requirement. The reality is, you've now done 20 units and 4 of them should be affordable. This will excite the world, but it is.
Would you have to define a time frame? Because if I buy 2 this year and 10 years later I buy 2 more, I'm going to be held to a 25% affordable?
You have to get to 5 before it does.
Should there be one? If you've got 50.
I'm going to say yes. I'm not really excited if it's 10 years later and you do your, but the reality in terms of what we've been doing is we're now, I think their first application was pre-pandemic.
Who's that?
Ms. Dolgan.
Yes, definitely.
And she or the other principals involved are still at it, and we're 5 years into this, and I'll leave it to the township writing this, and they could do, but I don't think that because their first application was 6 years ago that they should get a pass if they've been applying all along. I do agree with you if, someone every 10 years is coming in, that's not what we're trying to avoid, but I more want to get the idea out there that doing multiple little projects shouldn't give you a pass on meeting the affordable ordinance requirements.
I think that's a good observation, because folks are clever, and that's a way to avoid that, and it's important to be responsible.
And, and I think the probable practical effect is going to deter them from applying, which I, at this point, don't view as a bad thing. When they first came in, I thought, oh, how nice these people are coming
Right.
and fixing up some deteriorated buildings, but not really anticipating on day one that they would triple the value of the units and, or sometimes more than that.
Yeah.
And,
I had a question about 18. Just if you could just explain it a little bit better, and I guess maybe that makes sense for me.
I've been struggling now for a little more than a year how best to address this. I started with shoot them. Was told that wasn't legal. The last meeting, I was thinking along the lines of a penalty if they came in, and decided that was probably not workable. I have no strong views other than we've now had a couple of examples of cut first, apply later, and one of the things where people don't cut first that we frequently deal with is, can you move this over to save this tree? You know, and frequently the applicants are coming in and saying, we're requesting a variance so we can save this tree. But,
Right.
You know, to do the house we did on Mountainside Park Terrace, they basically cleared the lot, built the house, which is a separate issue there, and then came in and said, oh, we need variances for the pool and the canopy, you know.
Right.
And I think it would be highly likely if they came in all together at once before they cleared and, you know, demolished the existing house, that we would have come up with something that preserved more trees on the property than they did. And I, maybe erroneously, but think that this was done so there were no trees left to save. It's, and that, you know, that there was any chance of their needing or wanting to cut down. And I think, as I said, I don't know the best solution for this. I don't want to be unduly punitive, but I think, and I think there are improvements to the tree removal ordinance that need to be done. That's next year's little project, because I want to compare the DEP recommended ordinance and what some other towns have done. But and the one thing that surprised me is this: the town doesn't separately deal with dead, diseased, danger trees that most ordinances deal with, and just set those up as a separate thing, because it's a generally good idea to get rid of those, except if you're out in the middle of the woods and dead trees are nice nesting places for a variety of birds and other creatures. But I'm if you have other thoughts on how to do this, I just don't want to have people catching on of we can cut our trees first and they're stuck with it.
So as I understand from what you said, that the intention is more so that when people submit applications that they have to do it all in one bunch, and so the way to deter people from having the application afterwards is to say that once you have a tree removal permit, you have to wait 2 years.
Right.
And they're going to know that beforehand. That way,
Right.
they need to
And
do it all
then,
at once.
I'm assuming they'll, when they get the permit, they'll be notified, or when they apply, that this will preclude you from submitting a board. It's not stopping someone from doing something that doesn't have to come to a board. I just, the stuff that's come to us is somewhat bigger, not, if you have a big enough property and you can do a big addition without a variance, then, but,
My concern with that is that I don't.
Permit, right?
Yeah.
So nobody's fooled.
Right.
You got the permit, you
Yeah, you know, it should be on the application form is, oh, by the way.
Right, okay.
That makes
That's
sense.
gonna be tricky, because if
Yeah.
they, through no ill intent, if they started construction and they be like, oh, can't pass because you're gonna need a variance for this, but they have a tree, they remove the tree. Again, no ill intent. I'm sorry to be the negative, but I just always
Well,
think.
no, but I also, I don't,
I can
also
appreciate
don't
the
have
spirit.
faith in the other departments in the town, the Shade Tree Commission or whatever it is, to notify people that, hey, if you take this tree down, you're not gonna be able to be, going to the zoning board for 2 years.
Right, I
just
mean, they
don't-
have to get the permit renewed, you know, to cut the tree down, so they're gonna be on notice, and
And is it one tree? Is it many trees? Like if you've
Oh.
got,
that's what
I think the
that's one of the
example-
problems I have with the tree removal ordinance. It doesn't make that distinction, but I made it so it doesn't apply to dead, dying, diseased trees. I don't know, but in some instances, I'm going to do the reverse, where the applicant, I think they're on South Mountain, but, where they were structuring the addition so it wouldn't impact a tree. We didn't think that would work, but if they, if there's one significant tree on the property and they say, well, that's right where we want to do the addition, yeah, I think they should have to pause or come in and do it all together. It's on some of these, and, we've gotten them more frequently where the variances so they could save the tree, but if they want to do something requiring a variance and they think they need to remove the tree, let's see it all together, and maybe we'll have a solution that enables the tree to be saved, or we'll say, you're right, we think this is good, and, we'll let you do it. But I don't want them dictating what we can do by saying it's gone, too bad for you.
I think this is a step towards
They've done that with buildings. I mean, the places up on, those two houses that the guy took down and just came to us.
No, they didn't come to us, they're
Well-
now, right, that's a separate story, and,
But it's that attitude. We can go in and do what we want, and then if we run into trouble, we'll go to the board.
I think this restriction is a step towards,
That's what you gotta
closer
stop.
towards being environmentally friendly, especially with addressing climate change, and how we're having a lot more, rain and all of that, so it will help with, erosion or drainage, all things that are important that are addressing climate change, so, yeah. Go ahead.
I'm gonna be the dissenting voice here, sorry. It's a tree. I wrote the carbon reduction plan for our climate action plan in our office. I'm fully aware of carbon, embodied carbon and operational carbon. I'm not ignorant about the climate, and I'm not in denial over the problems we have in global warming. But individual trees aren't solving the problem. And trying to thread the needle on the language of how big of a tree, what kind of a tree. Is it a tree that's, a widowmaker? I had a silver maple in my backyard. It's falling apart all over the backyard. My neighbor was complaining about my tree limb's going to kill his dog. I said, well, you can cut any tree limb that goes over the property line, you can cut. So I'm not paying to cut it. But anyway, we eventually took it down. But it's a very sticky wicket from where I sit. And I think we may do better to stay out of the tree business than to get involved in it and to turn it into writing a law about that. Then you how big is a tree? Is it, you have to define the size of it, and there's a lot of issues that are tied to this that make me somewhat uncomfortable.
That's what makes Montclair Montclair, though.
Understood, that's why I felt comfortable speaking.
Sure.
I think the part of the issue you're doing is in terms of where the tree removal ordinance applies and how, but it is something, and one, we're not saying you can't cut the tree. We're saying apply to us first if, you're going to need a board or a planning board before you need it. Worst case is you're waiting 2 years. It's not like you're doomed forever. But I just think, and part of this deals with my prior regulatory life, part of this deals with my current life representing these nice applicant people. If people catch on that they can cut trees and then apply, they are going to start doing it. That's just the reality of the world.
But that's kind of the situation we have now, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I think at least put them on notice that there's a 2-year pause, and for most people, cutting down a tree in their yard for whatever reason, this is irrelevant if they're doing it in the context of, we know we want to put an addition on and we want to get it out of the way, so we're not told to save it. Or, my real concern is the larger developer who, building a new house or something on a larger scale than that, saying, we don't want these nasty trees, and, is what happened on Mountainside Park Terrace. Okay.
But don't, when a tree is removed, doesn't it have to be replaced?
Yes.
Right.
But, it's, or they can do a $250 contribution to the town tree fund.
Yeah.
But replacing, and it's a question what it is, a 100-year-old tree with a 2.5-inch sapling is, a whole different matter as to its ecological impact. Yeah, in 50 years it'll.
Right.
And, some of this I want, I suspect will occasion some discussion in the planning board and the governing body, but I at least want to start the discussion out there, and that these are concerns we have. As I said, I'm hoping to find the time sometime between now and whenever prepare the draft of the next report, that to look at other improvements to the forestry or the tree removal ordinance to enhance it.
Is there a time limit on getting these remarks to, or we just get them when
Okay, we should have done it like a few months ago. This is part of it was our busyness, my busyness. Part of it was turnover in assistant planners. Part of it was we were going to have an election with at least 6, and as it turned out, 7 new council members. And given the prior council ignored our last couple of recommendations, I didn't see any reason to rush to get it to them. I thought it better to let's get it to the new folks, and there's also been a fair amount of turnover on the planning board. So I think, hopefully next year will be in a timely fashion, and to reiterate, please, please, please make it clear where variances were approved but modified, that, yes, we approved 2 variances on this one, but we denied a third, that, because otherwise, reading it, looks like people come in here and they're automatically approved, and that is definitely not what happens. Okay, someone, either want to suggest further changes to this, or if not, move approval as is?
I just had maybe one more question for Mr. Griffith. To what you were saying earlier, do you think that the language of the trees would be like an undue burden to the applicant? I don't know either.
I'm not going to challenge what's written. I respect the source. I'm only commenting for the sake of this. I'm not commenting to maintain.
So I'll move the approval of the annual report as amended by the chair.
Okay, any discussion? Okay. We'll start off with all...
One quick question now. How will we be notified if any of these requested revisions are being considered or eventually made? Do we just hope to?
I am hopeful that the planning office, which advises the planning board, will keep us informed of this, of what is being considered, and I think we will periodically ask whether anything is happening with any of these, and whether, and if anything's, the council's considering anything, they will involve Janice, and she probably talks to Zainab and tells her what's going on.
Okay.
If not, we'll ask her to ask Janice if anything's going on.
Okay.
Okay.
You walk in here and you really don't know a lot of the stuff that's going on
Outside of the
Yeah, I mean,
board.
it's there. Things were much better a few years ago in keeping us informed, and they're doing things. I am hoping we were returning to that. It's just, they weren't doing anything the past, I'll say, 3 years, and, the recommendation on the parking, now I can't find it, for museums, I mean, that's probably 3 years old. I mean, that's, and then that's just, the current requirement is just plain silly. And we don't have that many museum applications, but, over time, the Montclair Art Museum has done a variety of things, including the big expansion. I assume over time they will continue, and it should have the parking requirement should have some rational basis to the need. Okay. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Thank you all for being here, even though this was the night we most needed you, though having the discussion on the annual report with everybody was good, and please be here at the night after Election Day, so we can hopefully finish 400 Orange Road and not have to count. What?
Is this the full board?
This is the full board. This is.
First time.
So we can finish that and not have to carry it, because there are less than 7 of us, and they want to vote with 7 of us, and so the nice objectors don't get cranky of having to come back again.
Understood.
We have the next meeting when?
The 6th, November 6th.
November 6th.
That's it, and that's got one on it?
Has just that application on it. If they pull out, I will shoot them. Because, I mean, we are, if all the applicants who have been postponing proceed, we are in a lot of trouble.
In December.
Because, you know, this was a very full agenda that we were questioning whether we could finish, and we ended up with one. And you know, we're going to have a very busy December, which is not really when I want to be very busy, but that's where we are.
And that one application was the rescheduled one, like we moved them up. So they weren't one of the original agenda items for today.
Yeah, yes, they had messed up, actually, they were scheduled for earlier, they hadn't gotten their notice in time, and we, as applications started to drop off, we put them here, and they ended up being the only one.
Good for them. Motion to adjourn.
Okay, motion to adjourn? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Good night. See you hopefully in a good mood at the next meeting.
Have they made more changes, or is it still 7 units as is 400
I have not heard or seen any changes.